Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. Casey Phillips and Scott Smith here with you on another beautiful morning. We got a nice shot of the QBs for you. Unfortunately, I think that's probably the only shot we're going to be having for you because the team has gone inside again, and Scott sort of called it. He thought that might happen today. Yes, his prediction skills were on point.
Yep.
Figured that because of what they had done last week in terms of a couple hot days outside, tough practices, give them a breather for a day, you figured today might be that day as well.
The schedule looked a little shorter too. I think it looked more like game planning type stuff. Just get through a whole bunch of plays, but maybe a little less indie stuff.
Right, yeah. Well, as a reminder, we are going to be taking your questions towards the end of the show, so make sure you submit those on Facebook and YouTube, and that's how I'll be able to find them later in the show. As always, we love starting out with our Frontier play of the day from yesterday's practice.
I would die, baby. He got me rushing touchdown to you.
That was pretty great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that little sass at the end there.
Sass, hey, I like that.
Yeah, and I love that in these practices, especially again when you don't get preseason games, you are gonna have to go against your own teammates all the time. It's cool to hear that they still are kind of getting after each other, having fun, being able to trash talk a bit. I feel like it's weird. It's like it gets you ready for the season and has nice team bonding elements to it
Casey,
as well.
I just hope it doesn't cause any kerfuffles.
Thank you. See, I'm so glad you're going to start using my favorite word. It's just my favorite word. Okay, so I know that we got a lot of great stuff from media availability yesterday, particularly on the defensive side and then just the trenches overall. You know, the people that don't always get all the glory, all the honor, you know, especially the O-linemen where you only hear their names when they do something wrong. So we're going to try to give a little bit of love to the D-line, the O-line today. So let's first of all, I know we got to hear from Todd Bowles, and he had some really interesting things to say. I know we will get into the defensive side, but he had some interesting things to say about what going against Tom Brady in practice is doing for the defense. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm trying to distinguish between what he said, because every single person who gets in the Zoom call is asked, what's it like going against Tom Brady? If he was the same as everybody else, he's talking a lot about, I know the one. He introduced a phrase that we're going to be hearing a lot of, I'm sure of, great incompletions. He said the highest praise he could give Tom Brady was that he throws great incompletions, which really is another way of saying he throws it where only his guy can catch it. And I have to give credit to ESPN writer Bill Barnwell for following up on that. He had a tweet that said, this is really backed up by stats, believe it or not, because if you compare his on-target rate, which isn't necessarily the highest in the league, but then his completion rate and his interception rates are always among the best. So that's a good point. When he throws it, either it's where a guy can catch it or he's put it in a safe place where maybe his guy can get it, but if not, it's not getting picked off. And apparently that's already showing up here in practice, and that's pretty interesting. What a lot of other guys have said is that he's very good at seeing through their disguises and knowing what they're going to do, and that he's also, as you would expect any veteran quarterback to be, he's good at moving guys around with his eyes. So he's moving the safeties by making them think he's going somewhere and then going somewhere else.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's just going to be such great practice for the defense that, again, it's like, I think it was Bowles, like you said, so many people have been asked a similar question, it starts to blur together, but I think it was Bowles who basically said, it gives your guys a lot of confidence that if they're doing well against him, that makes you feel pretty good about where you're at.
Right,
and,
he said
and that. I mean, I feel like that this year in particular, that has more value than any other year because you don't get to go against anybody else. So I think that was one of my biggest concerns with no preseason games. And, you know, everybody gets about, they can still get prepared. College doesn't have preseason games. And, yeah, it's true. But to really get a baseline view of where you are when you're only practicing against yourselves, it's just harder to know really where you stand.
Sure.
And so to hear that, if we can do well against him, that's a great sign.
It's confidence, if nothing else. I think this is going to be a very interesting experiment this year to see how much preseason games really matter. Is the game going to be sharp as it usually is, or are games going to be a little bit ragged in the early going? I think most people expect it to be the latter, but if it's not, that might give you an idea that maybe we don't need 4 preseason games. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm sure some of the players, not so much the undrafted ones.
The young guys would like all the chances.
The youngers are like, can we have 12 preseason games, please? But yes. Okay, so again, on the defensive side, defensive line, yesterday we talked a lot about outside linebackers and inside linebackers. Let's kind of complete the front seven discussion here. And we talked about how important it was to bring that front seven back, that they were, the leading rush defense in the league last year, and how amazing it was that Bo Allen was pretty much one of the only pieces that we lost. And now they have kind of brought in another couple people, either through free agency or draft or whatever, to try to fulfill that. So where do you feel like we stand on specifically the defensive line now, depth-wise, starters all the way down through depth?
Right, we're talking about down linemen. As you can see here, I think that's pretty good depth personally. And Casey Rogers was going through it the other day, and his main point was he's got a lot of variety. Khalil Davis, good at penetrating, a quick penetrating guy in the middle, which they don't have a lot of otherwise. Will Golston obviously is outstanding against the run. He said Patrick O'Connor has a lot of length. Kyle Love is a veteran, knows what he's doing. And Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, we know about them. Jeremiah Ledbetter is another guy that can get a little bit of penetration. So there's a wide variety of possibilities there. And, but it starts up front with those three guys, Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, and Will Golston, who I think we might have mentioned the other day, but it's worth saying again, really a guy that's maybe a little bit underappreciated. He was very good last year. He was the guy when offenses tried to run to the power side with the extra tight end, that he was the guy that had to hold up on that side, and he did a really good job of it. And he's just a really good fit for this particular defense. So, talking about Ndamukong Suh, if we can see the graphic about run defense, first of all, this one, Ndamukong Suh probably wasn't thrilled that his sack total ended up at 2.5 last year. He probably would have liked to have more, but we know, as every coach has said, him and Vita eating up blocks and double teams inside really helped our outside guys rack up a ton of sacks. But he did get 43 quarterback pressures there, which was tied for third among defensive linemen, down inside interior defensive linemen. And then look at this. This is the five best run defenses in terms of yards allowed per carry of the last 10 years. If you'll notice the little asterisk there, the Lions was the second best, the Bucs are the third best, and Ndamukong Suh was prominently featured in both of those defenses. So I think it's safe to say that he's very good at stopping the run.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. He's the nice little common denominator there. Yeah, and it was cool to hear, as much as you talked about the idea of Suh kind of wanting maybe more sacks but still getting a lot of QB pressures. Ali Marpet was asked about Vita Vea's pass rush ability yesterday, and he said that he thinks that that's an area that Vita's going to be a lot better at. Vita also talked about really working on that with watching film. So as much as they've been amazing at stopping the run, I think there's a high likelihood that Vita could see more in terms of the pass rush aspect. And if he's having to do it and doing well where Ali Marpet saw a benefit already with a club on his hand, when he gets that off, he's going to be like a kid in a candy store.
Which
it's like, oh my gosh, it's almost kind of nice that it's forcing him to try to get better with it being a harder situation.
Yeah. The story on Vita, and it's accurate, last year is in his second season, he quietly had a really strong season to the point where people that kind of look a little more closely at NFL teams were starting to say, hey, look at this guy. He's nobody's talking about him much, but he had a good year. That's based mostly on how great he was at stopping the run and the fact that he really did push the pocket around, as Coach Arians said the other day. But again, only 2.5 sacks. His path to being really an NFL superstar, our next great defensive tackle, we had Warren Sapp, we had Joe McCoy. The next great one is adding sacks to that. And Coach says he's got such nimble feet that with that bulk and those feet, he should be able to penetrate and get in there and get some sacks. So if he does that, we're talking about a superstar quite clearly. I mean, you just can't put it any other way. Coach Bowles said the key for him is using his hands better. So first of all, where he places his hands first, and then how much he does with his hand movement after that to get off a block, because as Bowles put it, if he got locked up with a guy, he tried to move with his hands, didn't work out, he got locked up with the guy, he just immediately defaulted to power move because he's so powerful. Bowles is like, keep fighting with your hands, you don't always have to power through the guy.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much more we're going to start to see. I think those learning processes where he grows and learns even more, that it's only up from here for him, which is going to be incredible. All right, well, next we're going to talk about the offensive line, an area I know that a lot of you guys have been talking about, especially wanting to know how rookie Tristan Wirfs is doing. So let's have a little Meet the Rookies with him.
I'm a very passionate guy. I love fans. I'm a big people person. Like running off the field, like I love celebrating with them, pumping them up after I win and stuff like that. So I'm very passionate, on and off the field. In the University of Iowa is very different than a lot of schools. I think we're held to a pretty high standard, probably a higher standard than most. Win, graduate, and do it right. That's kind of the University of Iowa's mantra. I was really big into baseball growing up. That was, I think, for a long time, my number one sport. And then in high school, track kind of came into the picture quite a bit, shot put and discus. So I think there were a lot of times when I guess my number one sport changed. I would say growing up, yeah, I did as many as I could, but I think baseball would have definitely been, that was a close race between football and baseball. It just makes you into a well-rounded athlete. Like you get so much different exposure, like to different muscle groups, like wrestling. I mean, the first day of wrestling, you come home and wake up next morning and you're sore in places that you didn't think you could be sore. And I think just that exposure to different things, kind of creates a pretty well-balanced athlete. My mom, her commitment just taught me kind of to be accountable. Like, I don't know, we kind of had this thing in Iowa. It's like, you're not gonna be able to do anything if you're not there. I think the commitment, that she made, being able to come to all my sport, let alone, let me play all the sports, but making the commitment to still come to every event, do her best to come to every sporting event was incredible. It meant the world to me. My biggest goal, make the biggest impact that I can. I love being a part of a team. I loved all my teammates at Iowa, and I can't wait to get to meet, all the guys on the Bucks. So just make the biggest impact that I can, in any way, shape, or form. And hopefully we have a lot of success on the field. But I think that's my main goal right now.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Obviously, it's been a long time since we've been together. We've got some new faces, all right? I'm not gonna go through all the introductions like we normally do on this day. COVID testing. Now, man, this is part of life, all right? When you embrace this and realize this is our only chance of winning. Commitments and obligations this year are different. We got a mask on, don't we? Let's face it, dude. We ain't the Bucks. We're 80 motherfuckers looking for a job. Get one of them. We're gonna have our ass ready to go to New Orleans. They're allowed to pump in noise now this year. So you know what that's gonna be like in New Orleans. Just like as they had their fans. Trust. You can't trust anybody if you don't look in the mirror and trust that. Is the guy in the mirror doing what it takes? Loyalty, faithful adherence to a cause. What's the cause? Win the world championship. That's it. We ain't got but so much time this year. It's different. Respect. We gotta respect the process. Coming to work every day, getting that day's job done. Honest to God, I looked out there today. I've been in this league 27 years. I've never seen so much talent on one field.
Welcome back into Training Camp Live, presented by Publix, and Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith. And as you can see, we got Brady and Mike over there probably getting some vet days of rest. I'm sure people will be asking Coach about that for the official confirmation after practice, but
it's vet days.
It's going to be vet days. This is how it went last week when they were moving the whole team inside, that, they gave some of those guys that the day off to just rest their bodies, make sure they're ready to go. And something tells me both of those guys know what they're doing, and a day off isn't going to hurt a whole lot.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to cause any real issues.
So I know last segment we were talking about the defensive line. We're going to get into the offensive line here in a minute, and we're going to get to your questions in the final segment on Facebook and YouTube. But there was one guy, we ran out of time before we really got to talk about him, and he's been a pretty big focal point of some of the media questions of guys like Todd Bowles and Casey Rogers, and just has been a topic of discussion. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, who everybody here affectionately calls Nacho. Just in general, I feel like we've heard a lot about both his play and his overall attitude, that he's a trash talker, he's loud, he gets everybody fired up, and that he's also been showing up in terms of his X's and O's.
Yeah, you're kind to say we forgot. It was really me. I was going through that list when the graphic was on the screen, and I skipped him because I wanted to talk about him alone, and then I never got back to it. But he might be the most praised guy in this training camp so far from coaches and teammates. You're talking about a guy that was a reserve, one of the main reserves on the D-line, but a reserve last year. And, I mean, he still will be a reserve, but he might see more playing time because he's apparently just kicking butt out here. And I think it was Coach Bowles that says his upper body looks different. He's stronger, and he's pushing people around. And as we talked about the other day, he's playing with a lot of intensity, and it's kind of making others around him have to do the same, because if you don't match his intensity, he's dominating you. And so that's kind of good when you have a guy that's sort of setting a tone in practice, and it's not Tom Brady and it's not Ndamukong Suh, it's another guy that's helpful. And so also, as you kind of alluded to, he's apparently a bit of a trash talker.
Yes.
And so he kind of almost needs to be that good to be backing up all the trash that he's talking.
I mean, either way, at least he's big. So, I feel like that alone helps you back up your trash talk. This is why I never trash talked when I played sports. I was like, look at me. That's not going to go well. Okay, so now moving on to more of the offensive line area. We know, obviously, we got Donovan Smith at left tackle, and we've got Ali Marpet, and we've got Ryan Jensen, we've got Alex Kappa. Those are going to be your starters. And then it's looking like, either would you say Joe Haig or Tristan Wirfs? It just depends on how ready they feel like Tristan Wirfs will be. How do you feel like between the two of them, what will that look like at right tackle? And maybe, especially compared to what we've had in years past, will it be an improvement? Will it be sort of a holding steady? Just where you feel like that right tackle position could look like, especially early in the year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Tristan Wirfs. I mean, Coach Arians said maybe a week ago, we feel very good about Joe Haig. We know what he can do. So if Tristan's not ready week one, then we can put Joe Haig in there. But he wasn't saying that he thought that was going to happen. He just said if we get to that point, we feel good about Haig. But recently, guys talking, Ali Marpet yesterday, guys talking about how Tristan Wirfs looks. They say he's right on track. He's doing just fine. So we've talked about it a lot. Every rookie's going to have a tough transition this year, and so the guys that are being counted on to step right in, that's quite a challenge that a lot of rookies have never faced before. And I think, personally, that offensive line and offensive tackle in particular is one place where it's really hard to dominate as a rookie, even if you have dominant physical skills, and you might eventually be a star. So he's a guy to watch. It's fair to be concerned how well he'll be right out of the gate, but I think they feel good about what he's doing on the field right now.
Okay, so the same way we did with the defensive line, let's look at some of these potential backups. I know there's a lot of rookies that are in camp at the O-line position and vying for some of those few spots, and we've talked about how tough it's going to be, especially for undrafted guys, to try to carve out a spot. And I feel like especially in the trenches. I mean, it's hard to stand out or shine, I feel like, when you're not even doing full contact. And, we joke that, every run goes for a touchdown because that's the way it goes. So I just feel like it's got to be kind of hard to really to really evaluate. But let's look at some of these guys that are potential backups here, and who you feel like has a chance to actually make the team and then making the practice squad potentially.
Well, the thing that jumps out at me as a whole with that group is I believe between all of them combined, they have 2 NFL regular season starts, and I think those are both for Anthony Fabiano. You got Zach Shackelford and Nick Leverett and John Molchon are all undrafted rookies, and Zach Bailey was an undrafted rookie last year. That's the interior guys, including Anthony Fabiano. That's and Aaron Stinney. And Aaron Stinney was a guy that they were talking about, that Ali Marpet was talking about yesterday as a guy that's kind of stood out to him among the reserves. That's a guy we did have here last year. Didn't see a lot of action, but was here all year, and so they have most of the year. So they have a good feel for him, and apparently he's doing pretty well and could step up. We also have heard reports, and we're in this situation again where, because guys have to go through not only physicals but rounds of COVID testing. There's a bit of a lag between when we try to bring a guy in and when we can actually officially sign him. So we can't really talk about it yet, but we have heard reports of maybe a veteran addition on the interior line there that could bring you that experience that you need. But Ali Marpet made a point yesterday. He said he wanted to give a shout out to the entire group of young offensive linemen that are coming in this year, because he says he was surprised at how prepared they were. He didn't think they would be without any offseason program, and he's really been pleasantly surprised at how ready they were when they got here. So, it's not uncommon to have untested depth on the offensive line. We've seen a lot of that. You just have to hope that our scouts have done a good job and our coaches have done a good job at identifying some guys that could step up if needed, like a Zach Bailey.
Yeah, and I talked to all those rookie offensive linemen this offseason, and they said that, there's all the actual team official meetings, the Zoom calls, all the stuff that's part of your offseason workout with coaches and all that, but they would still, outside of all of those sort of required team organized meetings, they would all just FaceTime or Zoom chat with each other, they said basically every day, making sure that they felt comfortable with the playbook, that they knew what they were doing, that basically every single day those rookie O-linemen were all FaceTiming with each other. And I thought that was incredible. They're not in the same place. They hadn't even met in person. That they took it upon themselves to say, hey, this is not a normal off season. There's a lot that we need to make sure we're ready. To me, that showed a lot of maturity, a lot of drive, and I was very impressed by that.
That sounds like an O-line kind of thing.
Right, doesn't it?
If there's any position that's going to get together,
the old faithfuls,
go out to dinner once a week, every week, that kind of thing. That's usually a tight-knit group, but you're talking a little bit differently because, as you said, these are rookies that haven't really even gotten to know each other yet, but they understand the importance of getting to know what they're doing. I could also, when we're talking about the offense, do we have a little more time to talk about that? Ali Marpet was talking about the run blocking this year and how they didn't feel like they played up to their standards in the rush offense last year. And honestly, the numbers weren't particularly good. The best thing you can say is that Ronald Jones had a 4.2 yards per carry average and looked pretty good by the end of the year. But overall, our rushing numbers were not very good. And we clearly would want a more balanced offense. So that'll also help when, Tom Brady's so good at play action and that sort of thing. So quick hitting type of stuff. So that works better when your running game is working better. It also helps you with your 12 personnel. If your running game is going well, when you have that, when you put two tight ends out there, it often makes people think that you're going to run the ball, and that's a good thing if you're trying to mix it up with Rob Gronkowski and O.J. Howard and sending them out in routes and so on. So he says it's really their top priority to be better against the run this year. So that's a big emphasis for them, and hopefully that comes to fruition.
Yeah, I think the tight ends and Tom Brady are going to help the offensive line a lot with their overall performance, of the fact that Brady gets it out of his hands so quickly.
True.
And that you now, in theory, have Gronk, who's known for being a really good blocking tight end. We've heard that OJ's been putting a lot of effort in to that, so they'll be better at blocking for that situation. So I think, all those things are going to probably help to where I wouldn't be surprised if you see the O-line's numbers get better across the board for a number of reasons, and including just maybe they have gotten better themselves. Yeah. But when you also have those other factors helping you, I think that's going to be good.
Yeah, and our pass protection numbers on the surface don't look great. They look like middle of the pack, but I think that's a little bit misleading. I think the pass protection was actually pretty good because with Jameis Winston back there and with Bruce Arians' offensive philosophies, we tended to hold the ball a little bit longer. The amount of time from snap to release was higher than most teams, so they had to protect for longer. And we threw a ton of passes last year, the most in the league. So if you're going to drop back 200 more times than another team, you're going to have some more sacks. But from a per snap basis, it wasn't that bad.
Okay. All right, we have one more segment coming up, and that is getting to your questions. So send those in on YouTube or Facebook, and I will be checking those out during this break. So we'll see you in a second.
Get live, yeehaw. Don't make a scene. Just eat. Yeah, since you light skin, I gotta hit my light skin face. That's what I do. Hey, this SMB. Oh Sean no. Murphy Bunty, not Sean Murphy. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, I got a whole lot of cellies. Who is this? That's Sue. Oh, this Mike. I done already did Mike. I did Mike. I said.
That was one of my favorite camp cams so far. I loved that.
Can we get Sean and Jamel a show?
Oh,
Like a
yeah.
variety show?
They have actually discussed that with me of wanting that. That like no joke.
It has to be a comedy variety
Oh
show.
yeah, very early on in their rookie year last year, I went and spoke to all the rookies just about media stuff and about our roles and what we do. And after that meeting, Sean Murphy Bunty came up to me. He's like, "Hey, you need a co-host. I got you." And I was like, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, he's a natural.
He is very much a natural. I love those impersonations. They're so accurate. They crack me up. And the JPP one, when all of a sudden JPP comes out of nowhere to join them, that was so great. And I love our camp cam. That's been a wonderful addition.
That
this
really
year.
has been a hit.
It really has. All right, so we are taking your questions on Facebook and YouTube right now. So if you haven't already submitted it, head on over there to do so right now. David asked, do you think Shackelford will make the team as a reserve or a practice squad guy?
At the moment, you'd have to. The safe bet would be practice squad. I mean, we're talking about a rookie who isn't getting much chance to show himself, and he's an undrafted rookie at that. And we do think there's going to be a veteran addition to help out at center. So the best bet is probably practice squad. But I do think he's a guy that'll be around this fall.
Yeah, and it's so funny. We've had a few different questions, and we just talked about how we finally have an answer for this. People have asked about the whole Tom Brady, Byron Leftwich connection,
which was hard for us to answer because we don't get to be around
them.
We
don't get to be in the meeting rooms. We don't get to be around, especially this year. We have less insight on that than any other year. But now it was actually finally brought up in media availability yesterday.
Yeah, so Coach Arian says it's been very good, as you would expect. He was pointing out that they're basically peers in terms of they played at the same time, and they're both. Byron was an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
He knows what Brady's going through at every step. But I think the main word that he used, and it's the same word that he's used with himself and Brady, is collaborative. So just as Arians has said all along that he worked with Tom Brady back in the spring to collaborate on what they wanted to do on offense, that's the same thing that Byron Leftwich has done with him. So apparently that's going well. But honestly, I think we're all finding out that Tom Brady isn't particularly hard to work with.
Right.
So it wasn't like you'd expect him to come in here and clash with Byron or something like that.
Yeah, no one is saying, man, I can't stand this guy. This is the worst. Eric asked, are there any updates on Dakota Dixon and how he's doing?
Well, all I can say is I haven't heard his name a whole lot. So I think that might be partially because there's a new guy in town, Antoine Winfield, and he's the fun, shiny, happy new toy, and he's doing well. He's doing very well. So that's where the focus has been. So it's a little tough to get snaps that aren't like reserve snaps when you're trying to compete with him and Mike Edwards and Jordan Whitehead and Andrew Adams. So I don't think we've heard a whole lot about Dakota, but we can fall back on how much they liked him last year, and then he got hurt and wasn't able to be a factor last year. But obviously they still think very highly of him, and he's a very smart guy, so I'm sure that he's having no problem executing the defense.
Right. This is an interesting question. Mike asked, who would you say is the next man up at inside linebacker after Levante and Devin?
It's Kevin Minter, and there's no question, because Coach Arians said that, or maybe I think it was Arians, said that specifically a day or two ago. He said Kevin Minter's clearly our third inside linebacker, and we saw that last year. Even when Dale Buchanan was here, it was Kevin Minter that they turned to, and he performed well in the basically 4 games that Devin White missed, and so they feel very comfortable with him if they have to go to him. So it's definitely Minter.
And Lou asked, who is winning the kicking competition?
Well, I don't think it's possible to know that right now. I think I would imagine when we have those 2 intra-squad scrimmages at the stadium, they will manufacture some pressure kicks. That's the good thing about those scrimmages. You can script them a little bit. And in fact, that makes it a little bit better in some ways than a preseason game, in that you can script the situations that you want when you won't necessarily get a pressure kick in a preseason game. I imagine they'll script some of those in there, and we'll see then this week and probably at the end of next week as well. I don't think it's gone perfectly because whenever coach has been asked about it, he'll mention that they missed this or they missed that. But apparently the other day, at the end of some drill, they hadn't scripted some pressure kicks and they both made it. So I don't think it's been an absolutely awesome camp for the kickers, but I don't think it's anything to panic about at this point.
Okay, and Mark asked, how do you think Raymond Calais is doing?
Ray Calais, man, they're killing me with these guys I don't have good answers for right now. Dakota Dixon and Ray Calais. I saw him make a really nice catch on a swing pass out by the sideline yesterday. It's sad. It's a shame, but I mean, I guess his chances of playing and making the 53-man roster are a little better with TJ Logan going down, unfortunately. And nobody wants to get a bump for that reason, but it's an unavoidable fact. Again, there's another guy I'd like to see a little bit more of in a game-time atmosphere before I can really know.
Josh asked, which tight end is going to be the biggest red zone threat this year?
That's a great question. Because by the stats, it's Cam Brate. I mean, he's a red zone monster. That's where he makes his living. But man, Gronk is awfully hard because hard not to pick because he can go. First of all, he's played with Brady so many years. Those two know exactly what to do down there. And then O.J. Howard is having a phenomenal camp. I don't think it's giving anything away to say he caught a pass in a goal line period yesterday because I won't tell you how it came about or anything, right. But he made a really nice move on a linebacker that lost the linebacker and made him wide open just across the goal line. It was the easiest touchdown pass of the whole period. So I have to pick through one of those three. I guess I'm going to go with Gronk because Gronk will definitely be on the field in a goal line situation because of his blocking. And so if you have him on the field, if he's the most likely one to be field and we know he's great down there, he's the best bet.
Okay, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Live presented by Publix. Thanks, as always, for being with us. We're going to be back here tomorrow morning, same time, and I think probably, hopefully, unless
with some action behind us.
There will be people behind us instead of them going inside, so make sure you tune in then, and we'll see you then.